We've all seen the International Space Station, an orbiting laboratory that stayed in space for years. So what's next? The ISS is coming to the end of its lifespan, and we need to find out what other space stations can replace it. And most of them, or all of them, are commercial. This is your episode of Astrox Radio this week. We missed out on last week's episode because I did a U console video, but now we're back and even better. Let's begin.
Ignition, engine start, and that's liftoff. Welcome to Astrox Radio.
So as I said, the International Space Station has been in low Earth orbit for 20 plus years. So more than 20 years, which is kind of insane thinking about how long you could keep something in orbit. But as years go by, the maintenance cost is going up and up and up. There's just more worth to build a whole new station itself. The station's been continuously inhabited since 2000, or since the year 2000, and it orbits Earth at almost 400 kilometers in low Earth orbit. And what's interesting is that over 3,000 experiments have been completed in the microgravity that you experience on the station, because some experiments can only be done with validity in microgravity. It was mainly built by NASA and Roscosmos, which Roscosmos is a Russian space agency, and obviously NASA is the United States Space Agency. Then there was ESA, JAXA, and CSA. ESA is a European space agency, JAXA is a Japanese one, and CSA is a Canadian one. What the station does is that it's helping to prepare for future Moon and Mars missions, which are coming up very soon, such as the Artemis 2 launch, which happened this week. But unfortunately, the station is now aging, with rising maintenance costs. The planned retirement is around 2030, in about 4 years, and it will be safely deorbited into the Pacific Ocean using a specific module that NASA has contracted SpaceX to make. The systems are aging, as they've been in space for more than 20 years. I'm pretty sure it's been 26 now, and they're getting harder to maintain. So there's no point upgrading now, as the overall station is getting very old. It's no longer cost effective. So NASA is shifting towards commercial stations, where the transition is already in progress. So what's next? We're moving on to the commercial stations, which focus on research, tourism, and manufacturing in space. NASA is funding companies through CLD, which is Commercial Low Earth Orbit Destinations Program, where the goal is continuous human presence in orbit. Private companies will own and operate stations where them themselves could do astronaut training, or the government agencies like NASA could do it themselves, where low Earth orbit will be becoming a business environment. Let's start with the first idea, orbital reef. It will be led by two large companies, one of them extraordinarily large, Blue Origin and Sierra Space. It will be designed for research, tourism, and commerce, and it will support about 10 people initially, with more coming in the next upgrades. It will have an internal volume of about 830 cubic meters, with a planned orbit being around 500 kilometers high. To get astronauts on board and to make the station itself, they'll be using New Glenn and Dream Chaser. The New Glenn rocket is from Blue Origin, and the Dream Chaser rocket is from Sierra Space. Dream Chaser isn't really a rocket, it's more of a space plane, which I made an episode about recently. New Glenn will probably be used for sending up modules for the space station into space, and maybe even sending some astronauts to crew the station. But mainly Dream Chaser will be used for the crew, as it probably doesn't have much of a payload capacity, but it does have good crew cadence that could come in the future. The main speciality of this station is that it includes inflatable habitat modules, which are already being thoroughly tested by Sierra Space. Then we've got the Axiom station, which ironically will be built by Axiom Space. It will start as being attached to the ISS as modules, which is an interesting concept because if they can't finish these modules before the ISS deorbits, then they've got to make a core module for thermoregulation, power generation, and water distribution before they can do anything, which will be hard. So they have to get this done before 2030, which we haven't seen much progress happening. After the so-called International Space Station attachment, they will detach and become its own station once it's matured enough, with its own core module and everything else. They're primarily going to use SpaceX for transport of astronauts to the station as well as the modules. With SpaceX is already flying private astronaut missions such as Polaris Dawn, which happened with Jared Isaacman, the NASA administrator, on board. The Axiom Space Station will most likely be one of the most advanced projects humanity has seen. Then we come to Starlab. It's developed by Voyager Space and Airbus. So Airbus is a plane company, but they've also got a space division. The Starlab will be designed as a single launch station, similar to how there was a Skylab station which was launched after the Apollo program. It will support around 4 astronauts concurrently, which will be focused on scientific research, and it will include robotic systems for further enhancements. It's planned for the late 2020s, so 2029, 2028, but we still don't know what's going to happen with it. There's not going to be much information. So what about China? There's always the China factor. So they've already had the Tiangong space station, which is already in orbit, and it's a very advanced space station. You can't see all the clutter that you see inside of the International Space Station, and it's operated completely independently by China. But they've had less international collaboration, and China has stayed very discreet about its future plans of stations, because that's basically what they do. To evaluate, Axiom will most likely have to launch first, as they want to attach to the International Space Station, where Orbital Reef is the most ambitious design, being really large, so up to 10 people at once, which is more than the ISS, and having inflatable modules and all this new technology. Starlab will probably have the simplest design, as only 4 astronauts concurrently, and there will only be a single launch station. No modules have to connect to each other, just one singular module that will have the whole station built into it. Basically, Axiom will be first, Orbital Reef will be the biggest, and Starlab will be the most efficient. Let's move on to this kind of new section we've created called Did You Catch the Cosmic Update? Which is basically just some trivia. And make sure that if you've been paying attention across this episode. So let's start with the first question. When did the International Space Station start continuous human habitation? The answer is the year 2000. Which space station idea will begin by attaching modules to the International Space Station? Answer is Axiom Station. And finally, which project plans to use inflatable modules? The answer is the Orbital Reef Station, managed by Blue Origin as well as Sierra Space. So overall, we know that the ISS marks the end of one glorious era, where commercial stations will be the next large step, where space will be more accessible to more people and be more exciting to us space enthusiasts on the ground. Overall, low Earth orbit is getting busy, and we'll see way more launches in the upcoming future. If you like this episode of Astrox Radio, please give me a hand by subscribing to me on YouTube and following me wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like this podcast and share it to whoever you think will be interested, as this is still a growing podcast. In the end, stay intrigued about space.